We are in week number 4 of our relationship series. Today, the relation slip is this: good relationships just work versus good relationships are work. Our text this morning will be Ephesians 6:10 through 20, but don't go there yet. Don't go there yet. I don't think I say this enough as a pastor, as your pastor. I fully believe in the deepest part of my heart, I cannot say this strong enough. I fully believe that the truth of Jesus Christ, His ways, His nature, that ancient text, the prophets of old, those truths that have spoken all through history and echo still today in our day and age, I fully believe that they can transform our lives. I fully believe that they can transform our community. I fully believe that they can bring hope to your family. I fully believe it. I wouldn't be in the ministry, I wouldn't be your pastor if I didn't really believe that the promises of Christ really did come true. And today we're looking at this interesting, it's really countercultural concept of relationships in our Relation Slips series. There, I got it out. Good relationships just work versus good relationships are work. Okay, now to get into this, I really need to define my two primary terms today. Covenant relationships and consumer relationships. Covenant relationship is this: a relationship where the well-being of the other person and the relationship you have with them is greater than your health and happiness. Consumer relationship is this: a relationship where your pleasure and subjective perception of what is fair is more important than the other person involved. Okay, now, this maybe really isn't super necessary, but just to make sure that you get this, I'm going to invite my wife to come up for a visual. You hate this, don't you? I really love you. You can clap for my wife. Does that make you feel better? I love you. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate this really fast. I just want you to see it. She doesn't have to do anything but stand there and look beautiful, which you do so well. I love you. You're great. Very cute today. Good. Okay, me too? Yes, that's good because you picked it out. So, consumer versus covenant relationship. Okay, so now we all have relationships that we are involved in, right? And a consumer relationship, to define my terms, when I say consumer, when I say covenant. A covenant relationship, if I'm in a covenant relationship with my wife, which I am, what is more important than my well-being is our promise that we made to each other. Did you hear me? What is more important than my well-being is the promise that we made to each other. So as we go through better or worse, sickness and health, till death do us part, it's the better or worse part that moves this from consumer to covenant relationship. So if I'm in a covenant relationship with her, my primary question is not how am I, it's how are we. We talked about that last week. It's not how am I, the primary question I'm asking is how are we. And then second to that, I'm asking, how is she? How are we? How is she? And then finally, at the very end, how am I? That's covenant relationship. So in the covenant, man, in that covenant connection, I am stepping back to the relationship, and I am stepping back to her health, the other person that's in this promise. I am second. I am third to that. In a consumer relationship, it's totally different. In a consumer relationship with her, now again, all you have to do is stand there and look pretty, which you do so well. You do so well. In a consumer relationship, I'm now in a relationship with her, but the primary question I'm asking is, how am I? What's in this for me? Am I still happy? Am I still satisfied? Do you get it? Consumer covenant. Thank you. You can sit down. I just wanted to point to you. Actually, it's fun just to bring you on stage and tell you how beautiful you are, because I don't know. It's embarrassing to you. I don't know. I love you. Thank you. Well done. She did good, did she not? Way to go, honey. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say covenant and consumer. So consumer is asking, how am I? What's going on in my life? How am I doing? Covenant relationship is how are we and how is the other person? Those are the primary things you're asking, okay? I have a new relationship in my life. And actually, technically, it's an old flame that has come back. My wife knows it, and she's actually okay with this. Honestly, over the years, we have broken our relationship off a few times. And her name is McDonald's. Now, you laugh, you think it's funny, but hear me out. When I was in high school when they still had off-campus lunches, so when it was time for lunch, I could hop in my car and drive wherever I want to eat. And a bunch of us guys would always go to McDonald's. Oh, she was beautiful. And I would order the 20-piece chicken McNugget for me. And I remember day after day sitting there eating those chicken McNuggets. Man, they were so good. And I would get, the barbecue sauce and the honey and the sweet and sour. Good stuff. You know what I'm talking about. Delicious. And so we were in this incredible relationship, McDonald's and I, chicken McNuggets and I. And then as I got a little bit older, I had to break up with her. And it was partially because my doctor, as I got a little older, I was putting on some weight and my blood pressure. And I thought she loved me, but I didn't know that McDonald's was really out to kill me. I didn't know this. And it was kind of cool because in this relationship I had with McDonald's, I discovered somebody even more beautiful, even more amazing. I discovered Arby's. And Arby's is awesome. And back in that day and age, they had the 5 for $5. You remember that? Anybody remember the 5 for $5? I would order the 5 for $5 and eat all of it. Just me. It was wonderful. And then my doctor told me that Arby's didn't really love me either. And at the end of the day, she was out to kill me with all the salt and unhealth. And it was awful. Terrible season of life. McDonald's has returned. And don't get me wrong, there were seasons over the years I would drive by and I'd see that big M. And it, without a doubt, was saying, Mike. Mike, please come here. And I know that those chicken nuggets are nothing more than cardboard, but the reality is if you put enough barbecue sauce on even cardboard, it's delicious. It really is. And so McDonald's has come back into my life because I've discovered that she has this pseudo-healthy menu, and I get that health is relative, and it probably still is manufactured somewhere. That lettuce is probably colored paper. I have no idea. But again, enough dressing, it's good. But the reality with McDonald's and with Arby's and all these restaurants, I am committed and I love them and I'm happy with them as long as it's okay with me. As long as I feel like it's a good deal and as long as I feel like it's worth it. And as long as I feel like it's worth it and it's a good deal and as long as it tastes good and makes me happy, I'm committed to McDonald's. But if I discover that she's trying to kill me, which I did, we got to break up. Because my health is more important than my relationship with McDonald's. You get it? Consumer relationship. The problem with consumer relationships is this. They are only as secure as your mood or perspective of yourself. The problem with consumer relationships is they are only as secure as your mood or your perspective of yourself, how you're doing. And if you think you're doing well, and if you think you're getting something out of it, then it's worth it and the relationship will continue. But as soon as you begin to feel like you're not getting enough out of this or you're not satisfied, you're going to bail. That's consumer. And the problem is, many of us, all of our relationships in life are really truly consumer relationships. Think about your work. I mean, you're committed to your work and you're going to show up and you're going to do your all, but really at the end of the day, more important than the job is your family, your health, you, how you're doing. And if you're happy and you're okay with it, then you're committed. Think about your friendships. I mean, I remember being a young adult. I remember my young adult days and hanging out with a bunch of people and having a great time. But in reality, I wasn't really in a covenant relationship with any of those young adults that I was friends with when I was a young adult. It was a consumer relationship, and so I'd hang out with them, and as long as it was fun to hang out with them, and as long as I was having a good time, and as long as I felt like I was getting enough out of it, then they were my friend. But as soon as the relationship started to shift and I felt like they were draining me or taking too much from me, I was out of it, consumer. Most people get into relationships in their marriage, and really, in all honesty, even though they stand on a stage and look each other in the eye and they make those covenants, better or worse, death do us part, sickness and health, right? Even though they go through all of this, in reality, the marriage is nothing more than a consumer relationship. You're only committed as long as you're happy and they're making you complete and you're fulfilled. And the problem with this is the security of the marriage is really, in all honesty, only as secure as the mood of each individual. If you're happy if you're satisfied, if you feel like the investment is worth it, then you're committed to it. But if you get into a season where the investment is not worth it, or you feel like it's too draining, then you're going to part ways and look for a new product that fits you better, that makes you happier. The problem with covenant relationships, so that's consumer. Covenant is better or worse, sickness and health, death do us part, right? So covenant friendship is not asking, covenant relationships are not asking, how am I first? Covenant relationships are asking, how are we first? This promise that we made. In our culture, it's very rare for us to find people that are in real covenant relationships. And we're getting ready to send another group of missionaries overseas, which is fun to do. And over the years, I've talked with missionaries, and it's interesting to me because once in a while, you'll come across these missionaries who are going to like closed countries where the gospel is illegal and they can't talk about their faith. And when I listen to them, I've had conversations, just a couple of times, I've had conversations with missionaries, and it went something like this. Pastor Mike, we're getting ready to leave, head out. I just want you to pray over us. And so, you kind of pray the simple prayer that we all pray. Lord Jesus, I pray that you protect him, watch over him. And they're going, no, that's not what I want. I'm not asking for protection. I just want to fulfill my promise to proclaim his word. Even if I don't live through this. Well, now, none of us feel that way about our jobs. We're not going to go, you know what, I promise to show up and give my all, even if they drain me dry, never pay me, beat me, abuse me, torture me, and hang me out back to die. I'll be committed to my job at McDonald's. None of us would say that. Because we're in a consumer relationship with them. But man, once in a while, you'll meet somebody that has that covenant relationship where they're saying, it doesn't matter what it costs me, it doesn't matter how drained I get, it doesn't matter what I go through, no matter what, I will fulfill my promise even if it kills me. The beauty of covenant relationships. There is a beauty that comes with covenant relationships. Because when you're in a covenant with someone and you make the promise, sickness and health, better or worse, no matter what we walk through, I will stand by your side. And then you go all the way back in time and sometimes I wish I could do this. I wish I could hop in a time machine and rewind time and just be a bystander, an observer. I wish I could get dressed up in their clothes and show up on the scene when Jesus was teaching and not be a name, a nobody in the group that was there in the crowd, but just to observe it in real life. And sometimes in my mind, I could imagine what it would look like. And what would it be like to listen to Jesus teach for that short period that he was playing the role right there when he was being Christ, when he was Christ, right, going through that process? What would it be like to watch him teach and listen to those words and hear him all the way through? And then in the end, right there, you think it's the end. Of course, we know the story. He comes back to life. But you're looking at him on the cross and he's bled out. He's died. You watched him do all these miracles. You know that if he wanted to, he could jump off the cross. He could say, you know what? I'm done. You guys aren't worth this. I want a new humans. But you watch him bleed out, you watch him die, you watch him suffer, you watch him give everything. And in the end, while he's still hanging on the cross, he looks down and he says, Father, forgive them. That's not a consumer relationship. That's not a consumer. This is covenant. No matter what, whatever it costs me, I will stay committed. Now, this is the beauty of a covenant. In a covenant, we begin to taste the depth of real love. A love that is valued more than my health, a love that is valued more than my mood, a security that's deeper than just my perspective. I believe that everybody needs to be in a covenant relationship. With your accountability partner, with your spouse, everybody needs to taste that. And you can't taste it till you've tasted it with Christ first. So the question is this: if relationships are hard and covenant relationships are difficult, how in the world do you survive a covenant relationship, going into it knowing that it's going to be difficult, going into it knowing that it's going to be hard? I mean, as a parent, being committed to your kids, there are bad days. In a marriage, committed to your spouse, there are bad days. How do you survive these relationships when you know that there's going to be really difficult seasons? Ephesians 6, 10 through 20. Again, the relation slip for today. The deepest relationships don't just work, they are work. The deepest relationships, the most satisfying relationships, the ones that touch your spirit in the most powerful way, they don't just happen. You don't trip into them. They don't always make you happy. They are incredible work. Ephesians 6, 10 through 20. We're going to take this apart literally piece by piece over the next 6 or 7 minutes. It says this: finally be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. One of those humbling realizations in life, one of the most humbling realizations in life is I can't. Real spiritual inner strength often doesn't begin until we have exhausted our perceived personal strength. This always amazes me as a pastor. People will come into my office, and I've shared this before a little bit. People will come into my office and they'll talk about how awful of a season they've been through. You know, I've been left, I've been through divorce, my dad's died, my mother's passed away, I've been diagnosed with a sickness. I mean, whatever it is, they go through these awful tragedies in life. And then they'll often say something like this: and I feel like I have nowhere to turn, so I'm here at the church. I have nowhere to turn, so I'm here at the church. And so they'll get engaged in the church and they'll get plugged in. I've heard this over and over and over and over again over the years. They'll get engaged, they'll go to the church, they'll make connections, they'll grow spiritually, they'll be more fulfilled, and then they'll still look back on that season. I went through this really hard time, I was diagnosed with a sickness, whatever it may be. And it's funny because often in those seasons of deep void, you find the soil in that emptiness, in that willingness to say, I can't. In that soil, you begin to find what real relationship with Jesus is about. You begin to really, truly call out. You begin to say, you know what, I can't, I'm not strong enough, and the only way I'm going to survive this is by the grace and mercy of Jesus Christ. And it's often in the soil of I can't, in our brokenness, that real faith is birthed. Verse 11 and 12 say this: put on the whole armor of God so that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces and evil in heavenly places. Warren Wiersbe says this: as Christians, we face three enemies: the world, the flesh, and the devil. The world refers to the system around us that opposed God, as opposed to God. That caters to the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life. Now, the thing that I think is really interesting from this is Crossway. It says the word schemes here is the diabolical origin. The diabolical origin is exposed regarding the deceitful schemes of those teaching false doctrine. See verses 4:14, 1 John 2:18, 22, 4, 3 through 2, and 2 John 7. So there's a bunch of scripture there to back it up. But what we're literally seeing in this verse, I love this. Put on the whole armor of God so that you'll be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. Literally, the schemes of the devil are bad doctrine, bad teaching. And I get it, man. In our day and age, especially with the internet and the blog, I mean, you can get online and you can search for anything you want. And I'm amazed at what people share on Facebook. Seriously. I'm really amazed. I'm thinking, what are you thinking? Not only is that theologically wrong and off, but clearly this idea has not ever been tested or probably ever produced fruit in anyone's life. But there you are sharing it for the whole world like it's the answer. Facebook sometimes drives me nuts. And literally the idea here is that the thing, the object that can damage you the most, that can rip your relationships apart, that can steer you in a wrong direction, it's bad doctrine. bad ideas, wrong advice that you choose to let sink into your heart. So let me ask you this. Do you spend more time watching pop psychology TV shows than you do in the Word of God? What kind of music do you let pour into your mind and heart? Whose advice do you run down when you're going through difficult seasons of life? Because that truth that you call lowercase t in quotation because it's not really truth, that truth that you let into your life, that you choose to soak in, to own, could absolutely destroy you. That's literally what this means. Be very careful what you choose to adopt. There is I've noticed this over years, and I've kind of made this a saying of mine. In counseling, when people will come in, whatever thing they want to be different about the Bible, like one that I've heard before is like sex before marriage. Sex before marriage is okay, Pastor Mike. I read through the Bible, I looked up some different things, and here's why I think it's okay. And what happens with truth is our pursuit of truth, whenever we are chasing down a truth, whatever it may be, whenever we're chasing down a truth, what we want truth to be, we'll find something to align towards it. Does this make sense? So whatever we want truth to be, and this is fun because, in conversations with people, it's like this, if it's a young college student sitting in my office going, sex before marriage is okay, and I'm sure it's okay, and even if you read through the Bible, those teachings were for those people at that day and age, they don't apply to today. So instead of getting into the debate with the person, it's fun just to ask these questions. Ask something like, were you taught that it was wrong? Well, yeah. Are you having sex with your girlfriend now? Yeah. So basically what you're telling me is you want this to be right and you'll do everything that you can to prove it to be true. Put on the whole armor of God to be able to stand against that word, schemes of the devil. Literally means bad doctrines that he weaves through all of culture, that he wants to make look really close to what's right, and he's hoping that you're going to find something that you want to adopt and bring into you, make this a part of you, who you are. And you leave the real truth for your perceived desired truth, and you own it. That's literally what this means. And you put on the armor of God to protect you, not against bullets or other countries coming in or against political leaders. That's not why it's there. It's literally there to protect you from owning bad doctrines and steering your heart in a wrong direction. That's why it's there. Verse 13, therefore take up the whole armor of God so you may be able to stand, to be able to withstand the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Anytime you see a therefore, ask the question, what is the therefore? Therefore, that's good. You guys are great scholars right there. Anytime you see therefore, ask the question, what is the therefore? Therefore. Because the therefore is there, therefore take up the whole armor of God. Why do we take up the whole armor of God? Because you will struggle. Because the struggle will come in areas of weakness, not only in areas of strength, but take up the complete armor of God. When we are complete in Christ, we will stand. Let me give you some examples. And you are in relationship, covenant relationship, that relationship will deteriorate. If it's covenant, it's stronger than your perspective. If it's nothing more than consumer, then it could deteriorate based on your perspectives, right? If you're having a good day, you're committed. If you're having a bad day, you're not. If you feel like you're getting something out of it, in a consumer, if you feel like you're getting something out of it, you're happy. But if you're not getting enough out of it, you're out. The adopting of covenant relationship is literally the owning of a new value system. And the center of your value system is now not you. You don't start your endeavor, your passion for truth. You don't start your journey towards truth asking the question, what do I want truth to be? You now start the journey towards truth asking the question, what is truth and how do I need to change to it? Do you get the difference? And if you don't protect yourself, if you don't guard yourself, it's very easy to let those weaknesses begin to rip you apart. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God to be able to stand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Verse 14, stand therefore, having fastened the belt of truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and the shoes, and as shoes fit your feet, having put them on in readiness for the gospel of peace. Verse 16, in all circumstances take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming darts of the evil one. Take up the helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Now, what I want to do is, instead of explaining, because I've taught through this before, instead of explaining the history here, soldiers and armor and what they meant, armament, putting it on. I want to pay attention to the other pieces of this, faith. I want to pay attention to other parts of this. The truth, the righteousness, the peace. Okay, so here we go. We're going to look at this. Take up the belt of truth. Don't be swayed by empty promises. The belt of truth is this. Don't be swayed by empty promises from temporal leaders. Don't be influenced by popular bloggers or fear-mongering news agencies. Don't be swayed by that. There's a truth that's secure. Hang on to it. There's a truth that outlived nations. There's a truth that has outlived every leader. There's a truth that outlives disease, that outlives empty philosophies. Everything is held together by the truth of God. It has woven its way through history. It has stood the test of time. Colossians 1:17, there is no nation, there is no people group, there is no other writing that has withstood the scrutiny and intensity that the Bible has had. Take up the belt of truth, right? So don't be swayed. Put on the breastplate of righteousness. Piercing acquisitions are deflected when we strive to live a righteous life. All right, now here's the difference. When you have Christians that just go, I acknowledge Jesus' truth, and you have Christians that go, I want to live Jesus' truth out. Those are two different things. If you have a church full of people that acknowledge Jesus as true, but don't try to live him out, they're missing the righteousness piece of the puzzle. This is why I love the holiness movement. The Nazarenes, the Methodists, the Wesleyans, like that whole holiness movement is wonderful. Because our passion is not just to go, yes, we agree with the Bible. Our passion is to say, we want to do our very best to live its truths out in our daily life. And when we strive to live a righteous life, it protects us. It literally protects us from the schemes. The breastplate of righteousness, feet with the gospel of peace. Yes, fit your feet with the gospel of peace. Your mission, knowing what carries you forward in life, is so essential. The good news of Jesus and ushering into your world his nature becomes the very thing that carries you with purpose into work, your home, your marriage, your friendships. Know your purpose. If you are floating through life and you don't have a purpose, you're in a really dangerous spot. And the beautiful thing with Scripture is that it gives you a purpose no matter what your location, no matter what your vocation, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, stay-at-home mom, CEO of a massive company, there is a purpose that you can own, that you can put to work wherever you are, whatever you do. And there's security that comes in that. The gospel of peace. Take up the shield of faith. The other metaphorical defense is faith. Faith is the substance of things unseen. It's looking at the evidence of God and finally choosing to believe in God. It's the powerful step that uses empirical evidence like rich soil to grow hope. It's the existential personal fortitude that the Western world has gone to war against. It separates man from just machine. It gives hope for peace and justice when all seems lost. It is an incredible light in darkness and empowers the weary. When you meet people that really do have a deep faith, I mean real, true, deep faith, they can look even death in the eye and be at peace. I'm not there. I mean, like I'm working on it and I'm building it and I'm trying to grow, but I have met a few older folks, just a few over the years, who are literally knocking on death's door, and when you talk with them, they have nothing but incredible peace. Because their faith is so great. The helmet of salvation. Your security is in what Christ did. Your security is in what Christ did. When the enemy whispers into your spirit that you are worthless, that you proclaim, when the enemy whispers in your spirit that you are worthless, you proclaim that your worth has already been decided and paid. I am fully loved and chosen by God. I am not merely dust that fades into nothing. I have spirit that lasts for forever. The offensive weapon, the one offensive weapon we have here is the word, the sword of faith, right? So here we go. The sword of spirit. This is good. The very words of God passed down, translated into countless languages. The tool that really does change the hearts of men. The word of God is living and active. The very spirit and nature of Christ living in them. Those words have ended wars, rescued slaves, fed the starving, birthed nations, humbled kings, and saved sinners. The words of God is your offensive weapon. That's what truly changes things. Verse 18 and 19, we're almost done. And 20, praying at all times in the Spirit with all prayer and supplication. To that end, keep alert with all perseverance, making supplication for the saints and also for me, that words may be given to me in opening my mouth boldly to proclaim the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains, and I may declare it boldly as I ought to speak. I'm going to invite Jason up, and we're going to be done here in just a minute. Covenant, consumer. The consumer is always asking, am I happy? The very center of the consumer heart, well, is me. The consumer walks into church and says, do I like it? Not are we fulfilling the promise to God that the church made, that he asked us to do, proclaim the word, disciple people in faith, But the selfish one, the consumer is asking, am I happy? Do I like it? Me, I am at the center of my world as the consumer. The consumer walks into a marriage and says, I am committed and in love with you as long as you make me happy. That's the consumer. The consumer runs away when things aren't done their way. The consumer bails on a marriage whenever they feel like they've been hurt in some way, shape, or form. The consumer friend is only a friend with you as long as you're fun and as long as they enjoy being around you. But as soon as you're not fun and you're not enjoyable, you're going through a hard time, or you're struggling with depression, or you don't know what the next step is in life, when you go through that difficult season, the consumer runs away because they're not happy with you anymore. They are at the center of their own world. The consumer relationship looks really fun from the beginning because your pleasure is a wonderful thing to think about and chase initially. But at the end of the day, we want to be loved at a level that's even deeper than our mood, because you're going to go through hard times too. The covenant. It's dangerous. It's risky. The covenant could cost you a lot. The covenant walks into a marriage and says, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, I won't quit. Whatever it costs me, whatever I go through, no matter what personal pain I have, I will not give up on you. And not just that, whatever you're going through, if you're going through a season of depression, if you're going through a season of difficulty, if you're going through a season of hardship, I will not walk out on you. That's covenant. It's risky. The deeper the relationship, the deeper the risks, the deeper the reward. The covenant goes before God. The person who wants a covenant relationship with God goes before God and doesn't say, I'm praying to you and my primary prayer is you make me happy. The covenant person goes before God and says, God, you shape me, mold me, work on me, transform me into your likeness. It's not about my pleasure. It's about a promise that is much richer and deeper. I believe every human needs to be loved in a covenant way. And I believe every human needs to taste how good it is to not just be loved, but also love in a covenant way. praying at all times in the Spirit with all prayer and supplication. The primary purpose of life is not your pleasure. It's the mission that God has given us. And the only way you're going to survive it in your marriage, in your home, with your children, the only way you're going to survive it with your friends, I mean your real friends, not just your consumer friends, but your covenant friends, covenant friendships, the real friends, the only way you're going to survive this is if you suit up with God's ways. You put on His truth and salvation. You put on His mission. You take His word. And you walk into these relationships and you say, whatever it costs, I will be Jesus to you. Can you imagine how our community would change if you and I were Christians like that? How our marriages would change if you and I were Christians like that? Consumer and covenant. Consumer, covenant.